ibyuma byapfuye.
nanjye kubaza uko byagenze.
Welcome to Radio Itemen. I am Jean-Paul Turayishimye, and I thank you to our viewers around the world for joining us on this date. Today's date is April 18, 2023. We are live on this date on this program. It is an English program. I believe this is the first, if I'm not mistaken, it might be the first or maybe the second English program. And I am joined by Aline Ndabaga. Aline Ndabaga is going to lead us in this program. And let me just double check and make sure we are together. Aline Ndabaga, the mic is yours if you can hear me. Ndabaga, can you hear me?
Hey, JP, I can hear you. Good evening to all our listeners. As I had mentioned before, we did a French version of this presentation that has to do with the injustice that the Rwandese people are living. So this is the English version that we promised you. The English version will be done with JP, just as I did the French version with Achille. So this presentation is really just like the French one, a cry for help from all Rwandans. It's now been 29 years since our country has found itself under a rule of a mafia-like government. And really, I would say it's a diabolical government and regime. That is unfortunately why we desperately need your voice to be joined to our voice so that both our voices can reach further. We have not been able to raise our voices for years, and we're getting to a point where we have been kept in so much trauma and terror that we're slowly shaking off all of that in order to move forward for the sake of our country and the future of our country. So the time has come. We've gathered our courage and strength, and we're going to shine light on the atrocities that the mafia-like government of Kagame and the RPF are doing in Rwanda. So stay tuned. We're going to show you exactly what you wouldn't see on any propaganda media that the government uses to portray Singapore-like country in Africa. We're actually going to show you a really sad place where you wouldn't want to be. So if I could ask the presentation to be shown, I'm not sure I can see it on my screen. JP, can you see it on your screen?
I'm sorry.
Can you see the PDF?
I cannot. Okay, now I can.
Perfect.
Now I can.
The hashtag we're going to use here is hashtag don't visit Rwanda and hashtag stop RPF Kagame. And this is to help us end his dictatorship, because that's what we're currently under. We're under a dictatorship. We don't have democracy in Rwanda. So if you could move to the next slide, we're just going to go right into it and talk about the first topic. The first and most important topic is the fact that Kagame is killing us. We, his citizens, are being killed and jailed. Kagame is not only killing our journalists, he's killing our politicians. These are politicians that dare criticize his diabolical regime. He's killing our singers, our poets. He's also killing the people who flee his terror outside the country. So JP, here's where I ask you, what can you tell our listeners about these people that I've mentioned, these different people in our society that are being killed and jailed?
Well, I really don't know whether there is much to say about this because for some reason, I think the internet and social media has made things easy for lots of people to find out what is going on around the world, especially in Rwanda, because as you know, the people, I mean, the category of the people that you just mentioned appears in the yearly or every year human rights report, Amnesty International. I think the question is actually whether the international community has good faith in trying to stop. At least we are not even asking the international community to stop Kagame or to stop RPF, but the fact that they continue to give aid, they support the Rwandan government economically, that alone is also it's kind of like a partnership in crimes in everything that he is doing to Rwandan people. So we can mention, like when you mentioned singers, journalists. Recently, by the way, I may mention a few names, but does not mean that really that is the only. I mean, those are the only names that have been jailed or killed or disappeared. I may mention John Williams Ntwari, for instance, who's most recent victim of this government, this regime, and Kizito Mihigo. So John Williams Ntwari is a journalist, but Kizito Mihigo is a singer, is an artist.
A gospel
And
singer, which is, I think, very important to add. He was a gospel singer.
I do not believe it was just a gospel singer. I mean, but it is mostly gospel
Yeah,
singer,
mostly gospel. He is
but
a church
sometimes
boy.
entertainment too. Sometimes he entertain, or sometimes history. I mean, it's sung about other things too. But mostly, yes, I agree.
Yeah,
For the
most
most part.
people would describe him. His genre was mainly, singing about unity, God, a lot of religious content in his
Yes, maybe unity.
yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
is one thing
And
that
so
described him.
and that is why he's no longer there, because he actually, correct me if I'm wrong, released a song about
Mostly, yes, I
uniting.
agree.
He
For the
released
most part.
people would describe him. He's sorry, I'm not
Somebody.
sure what happened there.
Yeah, I think and it's echoes. I think it's just echoes.
Yeah. So what I was
It
saying
could be
is
another
that
computer
most
open.
people would describe him as somebody who wrote a song about unity between, I think, the Hutus and the Tutsi, and the government just could not forgive him for that. Was
I'll
that
try to interpret the song in different ways. I think the song was about the meaning of death, which is not necessarily unity, but also to try to was advocating that even those who did not die by genocide, they are also they share they have pain when they lost someone.
exactly?
They also yes.
But when we're compassionate about other people's suffering, we're uniting ourselves to them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the message in all, like what he stood for the most part, was that unity. And our government despises unity.
Yes.
KP, I'm not sure who's not on mute, but I'm hearing some stuff. But what I'm saying is that unfortunately we have a government that despises unity. They don't like people shining light on the suffering of people. So what you and I are doing tonight could get us killed if we were in Rwanda. In fact, we couldn't do this and live in
No
Rwanda.
doubt, no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah.
No
And
doubt.
to the
But
people who are
yeah.
listening to us and who live abroad, imagine not being able to speak your mind because your government would right out to kill you for speaking your mind. That is
Yeah.
quite shocking.
For speaking, not just speaking. By the way, speaking mind, you are for it is when you say speaking in your mind, some people may think that sometimes people may confront the government and then speak their mind, but not necessarily that. And I think you agree with me, but sometimes you just they kill them because they stated the fact, because they said this is what happened. And that
Exactly.
alone, without even speaking in your mind, just the fact that you are narrating or you saying, this is the story that I saw, this is the brutality in the hands of the police. I saw this, or I heard this and so and so saying something. Just because you are repeating something that the government does not want you to repeat, even if you're not speaking your mind, you are just repeating restating the fact. That alone, it is a danger
Deadly.
to
Yeah,
you.
that is deadly in Rwanda. Yeah.
Yes.
Any family or anybody
So
who would be your friend.
please go ahead. Go ahead.
If there's one thing I wanted us to point out, the kidnapping when people flee his terror, I think
Before you get to kidnapping, because we did talk about an example of a journalist
yeah,
that was killed. We talked about an
singer.
artist or an artist, a singer, but we you mentioned as well politicians that that were silenced, that have been in the silence. They can't speak. They cannot criticize the government, whether it is outside the country or inside the country. But also the poets like a Bahati, Sam Bahati, today, till today, we don't know where he is. He was kidnapped, disappeared, and we don't know where he is. And honestly, the reason we don't need you know to to say everything surrounding his disappearance, but we know that he never said anything that was really that did not targeted. I mean, sorry, that targeted the government. He just did his art and put out something out there, and the government was not happy about it. And next day he disappeared, and that was it.
And by the way, freedom of speech is in the Rwandese constitution, but somehow under Kagame's diabolical regime, it's a crime. And there is nobody in Rwanda who can speak their mind unless they're going to praise Kagame. If you're
Mhm.
praising Kagame, you could say whatever you want all day, every day, even lie just to praise him. You could say that he's chosen by God and people will clap their hands. But if you dare say anything that he does that's evil, which is really most of his doings are evil, any of his, you know, evil, malicious actions towards his own people, then there's no freedom of speech. So that's where the problem is. So I'll let you give us an example of the politician, because I don't think we've touched on that.
Well, I do think that the easiest part is the politicians, because we can take an example of Victoire Ingabire. We can take an example of Diane Shima Rwigara. We can Bizimungu, Pasteur Bizimungu, the first president under RPF regime or rule. So the Niyitegeka, we can talk about, like, the list is endless. I
Yeah,
don't think it's it will be futile to just to name. I don't think we'll serve any first, because everybody who tried to run. We can talk about Mwenedata. We can talk about Twagiramungu. Everyone who tried to run against Kagame,
yeah,
he's either in jail,
or
fled
dead.
the country, or dead.
Yeah. And isn't it curious that in almost 30 years, there's never been a successful candidate against such an evil man?
Well, they will not be, because the person that select um, opponents, those who are eligible to compete against him, he's the one who kills them. He said, okay, you Mukabaramba, I'm going to allow you to compete just to legitimize the elections. That's
Yeah.
what they do. And that is definitely, so for me, I think the argument of, giving an example of politicians, singers, or people who are killed, or who have been killed, or jailed, or fled the country because of their opinion, political or just views, their views on on views on RPF government. Those, everyone. I do believe that everyone, at least those who follow Rwandan politics, they know what we are talking about. My question, which is exactly what I do tell my American friends, and I'm sure you do that too, and you should, and anyone who's listening to us who doesn't do that should start doing it, because that is exactly the only thing that we can do to help end this madness. And that is to tell them, stop supporting them, stop supporting Kagame and the RPF regime. That is, I think that should be the message, because they have the report. They have in America, United States government, every year they have what they call human rights report. I mean, it's a state, it's a country. I think it's named, the
I think
correct
it's
name is country report, and then slash human rights. Every year, every
yes.
year they mention the victims of this government. Of course, it's like a 200 pages document, but most of them are just evidence of what is in what they call executive summary. So if you read the executive summary, which is like a 3 pages or 5 pages, it will give you the highlights or the roadmap of what is contained in that report. So what I'm trying to say here, Ndabaga, is it's not really that this is a secret. It's an open secret. If anything, if it is a secret, it's an open secret. So everyone knows what is happening in Kigali. The only issue is why then continue to support Kigali or the government of Rwanda when you know all this is happening under this regime, and when you know that this is exactly what you say you stand for. These are your moral values. And an example you may mention, Francophonie, for instance. How can you explain to me that Louise Mushikiwabo ended up being the lead, I mean, the head of that institution? That is a no-brainer. You cannot really explain to me how that happened. That to tell you to, I took too long, but just to tell you to let you know, or to let the viewers know, that it is not that the international community don't know. They just sometimes turn their blind eyes, and then they said, "Oh, you know what? We're not going to mention this. We're not going to touch on this, because if we do, Kagame will be mad, will be angry, and then our project or our plan is going to be ruined."
But you
So
know
I'll
what,
let you.
JP?
Mhm.
One last thing I want to say is that I think the Rusesabagina kidnapping was a turning point, because for once, this was an issue that was concerning their own citizen, even though he's not a citizen, I know he was a permanent resident. But the fact that the Rwandan regime kidnapped an American resident is what made them realize that he is dangerous to all. And I think that's
Mhm.
a little bit unfair, because he has been dangerous to us for 29 years and they turned a blind eye. So it's time to open our eyes to everybody's suffering, not only the suffering of a US citizen at the hands of this regime.
And
So
that is because he was also recipient of a Medal of, I think, Presidential Medal of Freedom. That
yes,
is not somebody who's going to be ignored and then they'll forget about him. And there was a movie that was made about his action in Kigali. So that is, and everybody, like Americans, because the history of Rwanda, it's a really a young history.
yes.
And there is no way Rusesabagina have just disappeared in America and forget about him or just ignore Rusesabagina. That was not going to happen. I think it was a miscalculation on, I mean, by Kagame. It was a miscalculation. But if he had thought about all this, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the movie Hotel Rwanda, I think he would have thought twice about his action.
I agree. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So the next slide, we're going to talk about the current food situation in Rwanda. Obviously, we understand that in some countries there might be food concerns, because of drought or many other reasons. But essentially what's happening in Rwanda is that the government is instructing farmers what they can and cannot essentially grow. And when they grow it, they also instruct them that they cannot consume what they grow. They have to go and drop it off at a co-op. And these co-ops are actually almost a vehicle of theft, because once you give your crops to the co-op, you come back at the end of the month, and then 9 times out of 10, the person who was the accountant or the head of the co-op stole all the money and there's no money left. In turn, the government is also I don't even know what the true word would be, but they're so ruthless that they will sometimes go and uproot crops that have already been grown by the farmers for their own use, just because it's something that they did not want them to grow. So even when farmers try to find a way to feed themselves and their families, the government is so cruel and ruthless that they will come and destroy crops that are ready for consumption, even though people are dying of hunger. So imagine not getting your pay at the end of the month, turning around, realizing that maybe you have to grow your own crops and hope that you can get something to eat. And then the government says, we did not tell you to grow this, so we're just going to destroy this. Another point that I want to talk about is the fact that the government recently released a report saying that they had brought in millions in exports, and some of those exports that they were talking about were daily crops that Rwandese eat on a daily basis, like sweet potatoes, or beans, or cassava. So that's part of our daily diet. So how does a government export items that are needed in our daily diet that we don't have? We're starving. And when that money comes in, they won't even pay us for the labor that we're putting in to grow these crops. So essentially, it's almost as if the government is purposely starving their own people so that they can rule better, because a person who's hungry is most likely not going to even put their hand up if something is wrong. They will just go through the motions, because they barely have energy to live, let alone to protest. Even though we know protests are not an option in Rwanda, they would probably shoot them within seconds. But this is the current situation. So JP, is there anything you want to tell people about the current food situation in Kigali and in Rwanda, really all over the country?
Honestly, no, very much, because I think you touched on almost everything that I can't say it any better. But I just want to say the reason why this is so important to know, and that is actually the result. It is what happens when people do not have freedoms and do not have liberty. Because when you hear freedom, it's not just to go on a poll and then elect your favorite politician or something. But the fact that Rwanda have no liberties, people cannot choose. They have no freedom of choice, expression, or doing anything. That's the reason why they cannot even grow the crop of their choice, because there's no freedom in anything. There is no freedom in anything. You cannot write, you cannot say what you think, you cannot grow what you like, you cannot farm what you want. There is no. It's ironic because RPF, both, when they were fighting, they said the reason why they were fighting against Habyarimana's government was because they wanted freedom. They wanted to be free. And what came out of this victory of RPF, it's fear. It's just fear, because they don't care about what Rwandans think. They do not care what you think or what I think or what critics or anybody, what the critics say. So without freedom, Without liberty, without our freedom of choices to choose what we want to do or say, actually, all these that you just highlighted, you just mentioned, you just listed, is among those. So it's not just the crops, it is the freedom in general. Just the same as you cannot write a story that what we mentioned earlier, that you saw on the street with your own eyes. So the same thing, you cannot do anything when you don't have freedoms and liberty. That is exactly what is going to happen.
Yeah, so unfortunately, Kagame has single-handedly decided to take away all the freedoms provided to the Rwandan people in the constitution. So he believes that he's greater than our constitution, and there should be no president that should be stronger than the constitution. The constitution should be there to protect people, and the fact that a lot of higher up officials have allowed this to happen is quite shameful, actually, because Kagame couldn't do this by himself. He has to have people who condone this, who agree to renounce their freedoms just so that they can make him happy. And I really think time's up.
But I think you did mention it. You said it well with Achille last time you did the show about the mafia type,
Yes.
how Kagame
Yes.
operates.
Yeah.
Because once you set up a mafia government or a mafia structure, so you expect what is happening today. It is exactly what is going to happen, because the leader of the mafia tells the rest of them what he needs, and he's protected whatever he does. And if they think you're a snitch, you know, you're out, because that's exactly how these people who fled and then others died in exile or died in Rwanda, they consider them snitches,
Yeah,
you
and I
know.
do
But
invite people to go watch that show, because the mafia is like a pyramid. So there's only one or
yeah,
two people at the very top. So the people who really have the true power, if they really care to take their power into their own hands, are the people at the very bottom. That's where that's where the triangle is the widest. So we really need to. That's why we're here. That's why we need allies, friends to come together with us, because the strength is what's going to free us. We can't do this on our own. And I think that we need more and more people to join the bottom of the pyramid, or the triangle, so that we can actually free ourselves. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that. If we could go to the next slide, that would be great.
sure.
Next slide, please. So the third slide is the fact that Kagame is extorting us. Kagame has a system where in his country, he can single-handedly decide that he wants a piece of land. And if he wants that piece of land, he can relocate you somewhere else with zero compensation. For most people, that's unfathomable and it's almost unbelievable, but it is true. There's a neighborhood called Kangondo. He basically took the whole neighborhood and shipped it in some apartment building that he built, even though these people had spent years begging to only be paid what their house and land was worth, so they could move to wherever they wished. Some of them wanted to go back to their village. Some of them wanted to go in a different part of Kigali, but they didn't want to go in an apartment building where they had a room and a living room, essentially two little rooms, when they had maybe a 5-bedroom house. So this was actually a big scandal, but in a country where the mafia is at the helm, nothing came out of it. The courts decided not to side with the truth. They decided to, of course, side in favor of the mafia, because the mafia is, going to decide whether they live or die. So really, the justice system has no choice either. And another thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that individuals and businesses are forced to make donations to Kagame's political party. Imagine living in the US and being told that even though you're not a Democrat, even though you're not a Republican, you have to give money to any of these parties. That would be madness, but it is happening in Kigali. It is happening all over the country. They will take money out of your paycheck to put into a political party that is killing your neighbor, that is killing your politicians, that's killing your journalists, that's killing your favorite singer, that's killing your mom and dad. There's tons of families where the dads are all in jail simply because Kagame didn't like them. So at the end of the day, we really have to bring this home and think, what if I were living in a country where I couldn't choose where my paycheck went, or I couldn't choose to move wherever I want in the country. And not only that, that I worked very hard to own a home and land, and somebody could come and just take it all away and nothing ever happens. JP, I'll just let you say a few words about this.
No, I think I was just listening to you. I think that was very powerful. Obviously powerful in the ears of American or Canadian citizens or European citizens or those who have experienced freedoms and liberty and who understand what really the words mean. But for Rwandan people, they'll think you're crazy. They're not gonna they don't think that is really, really powerful, because I thought it was. It was very powerful because that is a good illustration. I was picturing myself being in the same situation, the same position. You work, you are, pardon my French, they say you are off, and you build a house or you buy a house, whether it's a mortgage or anything, and then someone said, just wake up in the morning and say, yeah, it's no more. It's gone. And you have no say. So I do understand that was very powerful. But I want to give an example. I want to just mention the fact that, we keep coming back to this businessman, Singapore Uyghur was assassinated. But this story that I'm going to share, this story that I'm going to share, is nothing to do with his assassination. I don't even think that is a reason why he was assassinated, but it was because at one time there was a fundraising event, which is similar to what you just mentioned, because they can take your paycheck without, and you have no say about it. You can't even complain. So I heard, and this is from credible source, that at one time they had a fundraising event, and I think they were forced to donate some amount of money. And I think everybody pledged donations, and I believe, and he did pledge the donation to RPF as well. But because it was in the amount that they did not like, or what they thought it was less, the amount that he pledged was less than what they expected. So what they did, they said, we don't want your money. And they returned the donation to him. And that is not because they did not want the money. And there was just intimidation, threats. And what happened? I heard, and I might be wrong about the amount, but that he had to increase the donation maybe 10 times the donation.
Give me another example where there was a businessman who had pledged, I believe, 10 million, and he had a business where a bunch of tourist cars would stop, and essentially one day they got a police car and stopped.
I do remember.
And stopped these tourist cars from actually purchasing at his store for 2 weeks, and then they eventually told him it was because they didn't like his donation.
I think it was a bar and grill on the way to Butare, yes.
And he had pledged millions. I think it was 10 million you had said, and they didn't think it was enough. And I thought to myself, first of all, there's no obligation.
That's maybe 2 millions, and I think end up donating 10 million. I think, but I think the donation.
You shouldn't have to give $1. When I donate. They always say to donate to your favorite charity. It has to come from your heart. And if it's a political party, it has to be a political party that you think is in line with your views, your beliefs. And sometimes the political party could be in line with your views and your beliefs, but somehow you're not in a good financial situation. But the RPF doesn't care. They want.
That's why people need to to understand why making choices, your own choices should matter when you are, I mean, we should advocate for this because Rwandans, as you know, they don't know what we're talking about. They know nothing about what we're talking about. They think, as I said, they think we're crazy. They think we are crazy.
Sadly, they've
They
never
don't,
experienced freedom. And that's the
yeah.
saddest part. The reason why the Rwandese people are today still living in terror and being terrorized by Kagame is because they have never to this day experienced democracy and freedom. Any government or rule they were under, they were being persecuted from one side or another. And I think in 2023, the Rwandans deserve a break. We deserve freedom, we deserve democracy, we deserve to just be able to choose who we give our hard-earned money to. I think there's nothing worse than somebody working from 8 to 8 o'clock at night only to be told that their money, their hard work has to go to somebody that they don't even like. And not only that, somebody who kills them, who's killing their neighbor. So you're talking about, it's no different than when the mafia in Mexico goes around businesses asking them to give them money or else they'll kill them. That's what the Rwandese government is doing. When Kagame asks you for money and you don't give him what he wants, which sometimes could be everything you own, even if you remain homeless, he will kill you. And that's terrifying. And that's why we're here. And that's why it matters to speak up and to say, stop Kagame, stop RPF. If we could move to the next slide, that would be great. So this slide is about the misappropriation of our country's wealth. These are a few things I'm going to talk about, but there's many ways Kagame steals our wealth. And we're not a very wealthy country. So when I mean wealth, that's the little that we have. He's stealing it. One example is the fact that Rwanda, as a poor country, has been sponsoring Arsenal, your favorite soccer team, with 10 million pounds a year since 2018. That's a lot of money for such a small country with such a small wealth. He has been doing this Visit Rwanda marketing campaign, spending millions, when in turn, those millions will actually be spent in the country by the people who come to visit us, but they will end up in his own pocket. And I'll explain why further down. But essentially, when you come visit Rwanda after seeing this campaign, you're going to spend money at hotels that he either owns or that he will extort later. So it's either the RPF already owns that hotel and you're giving them money, you're supporting their mafia-like regime, or they will later go and extort the owner. So you're not supporting the owner, you're not supporting the Rwandans, you're supporting Kagame. Another example is the fact that he actually has bought homes for his children abroad. An example is Ian Kagame, who owns a $7 million home in the US. He doesn't have the means to buy a $7 million home. He doesn't have a job that pays him enough to own a $7 million home. But because his dad is stealing our wealth, he's able to do all that. So when people think about visiting Rwanda and we're saying, no, do not visit Rwanda, this is what we're talking about. When you visit Rwanda, you're essentially putting money somewhere where the funds are going to go to kidnapping people, like the money that was used to kidnap Rusesabagina. They're going to go to buying homes for his children. They're going to be going to jailing people, surveilling people, terrorizing people. So that is what you need to think about. Don't think about the beautiful mountains in Rwanda. You think about what that money that you're spending in our country is going to do. So what I can ask you is, the next time you hear a friend say, I am going to go visit Rwanda, it's such a beautiful, beautiful country, and it's so clean, and I want to go spend my money there, say, no, don't visit Rwanda. And invite them to listen to this show. Invite them to document themselves on Human Rights Watch. we really need that word of mouth to go around so that people really know what is going on in our country. Because when you're there, you would never know. But Rwandans are dead alive. We're suffering. We're traumatized. A lot of us have mental health issues. And this is because of years and years of just pure mental and physical torture that we have endured under Kagame. So if you don't visit Rwanda, you're helping us. You're getting us closer to where we need to be, to where we're going to starve the beast. When you visit Rwanda, you're feeding the beast, and the beast will continue to eat us alive. But when you don't visit Rwanda, you're starving the beast. And hopefully we can get away alive. JP, I'll let you say a few words.
I'm not sure that I will say a few words, maybe not just because you asked, but the Visit Rwanda in its real slogan regarding or about supporting the team or using the team to raise awareness of what is happening in Rwanda, but in a positive way. That's what RPF does it for. It is raising awareness or attracting tourists to Rwanda. That's why they have the badge or the commercial tag that the Arsenal team wears. And actually, I think also the Paris Saint-Germain
Yes, that's
in
correct.
Paris.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
they
they
do
also
too.
about 10 million euros a year. So that's over 20 million euros a year going to
Because
sponsor.
their math is among, let's say, 100 millions that have seen the jersey or that bought the jersey of Paris Saint-Germain or Arsenal, at least maybe a handful or maybe 100,000 people are going to visit to go to Rwanda. Maybe they will try to find out what is about this country that we need to visit. So for me, the resources that go to Arsenal or because they have to pay, it's not free. They have
JP,
to pay Arsenal.
what I'm trying to say is that when he's using this money to promote Visit Rwanda, but once that
Mhm.
money gets to Rwanda, it doesn't trickle down to the people.
Not only that,
Oh,
don't even start there. Start from the money because somebody's paying the money to have that tag worn by Arsenal, right?
yeah.
So where that money coming from? Where the money coming from? Don't they need the money back home in Rwanda before they even cut a check to Arsenal? There are things that are being ignored in Rwanda. People are dying on the streets. People are starving, as you mentioned in previous slides. But that is, and then you can go to the money that they bring into the country. That is the second, because
Yeah,
the first
exactly.
is they cut a check to advertise Rwanda, they visit Rwanda. But then after that, let's say people respond to that advertisement and they go to Rwanda. The money, which is what you were saying, but I did focus myself. I did focus about. I did focus on the first check they cut to Arsenal to have their jersey. To have their jersey display the Visit Rwanda logo. That alone, that should not have happened in the first place.
Yeah, and
Where Kagame is getting the money, it's
what
international
other
aid.
what other poor country is on a jersey of Arsenal or Paris Saint-Germain? None. How is it that one of the 25 poorest countries in the world is on Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain's journey since 2018? That's money we don't have. But because he doesn't care whether we live or die, you know, he will just go and spend money on something like this when people back home are starving. We don't have a healthcare system. People can't get healthcare. People can't eat. People have nowhere to live. There's a lot of street kids. And he has invented a system where they will go around, pick up these street kids and throw them in a jail. Jails are filthy and overcrowded. People are starving. So at the end of the day, you really have to wonder what type of government, knowing that it's one of the poorest in the country and everything we spend is coming from external aid. We don't have any wealth of our own. We're not Congo. We're not, any of the countries that have their natural resources to live off. We don't have gas. We don't have oil. We don't have precious metals. So I really think this is very important for people to understand that this man is taking money that we don't have or money that we desperately need and spending it for his own benefit. Because once that money comes into the country, only him and his family will get a cut. Only they will benefit from it. But the Rwandans won't, and they need that money. And we shouldn't be on any t-shirt because we're poor. And we need that money for basic needs like healthcare and nutrition. So if we can move to the next slide, that would be great. So another thing that I think right now, it's all over the news. If anybody follows CNN or any other newscast, at some point this year, you would have seen the crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Kagame is looting and invading the DRC in our name. The first thing we're going to say is that even though he's doing it in our name, we're against it. We Rwandans do not believe in this war. We do not believe in looting our neighbors for our own personal benefit. We do not believe that a part of the DRC land is ours. We don't believe anything he's saying. We don't believe there's a genocide going on. None of that stuff rings true to us. So when he says those things, he only represents himself as the evil mafia boss that he is. So he created, under the cover of really M23, which is a terror group funded and supported by Kagame, he created a way of going to loot the DRC, bringing back the goods to Rwanda, selling it and enriching himself. And that's how we were able to build all those beautiful hotels that you see that, by the way, we cannot afford. We Rwandans cannot afford to go to Serena Hotel and buy pop. It's too expensive for us. So those hotels and those beautiful towers that you see, we cannot afford to go in there. Some of us don't have shoes, so we can't afford to even walk in to see what it looks like. We can afford to go swim at their pools because we don't have $30 per person to go swim there. So that is all a facade. We don't live in Singapore. It's all a facade, and it's all really built with the blood of the people that he kills in the DRC and the people that he loots in the DRC and the suffering of hundreds and hundreds of Rwandans. So really, that's really important for us as Rwandans to say, we believe the DRC is our neighbor. They deserve their own independence. They deserve their sovereignty, and we have no business going there. And we are ashamed to be portrayed as he portrays us, because as our president, he represents us. But God knows we did not vote for him. We do not condone anything he said. In fact, he's an embarrassment for most Rwandans who have a heart. There is a small portion for worshippers of Kagame who might tell you that the war is a just war, but for 99% of Rwandans, we are against it and we're suffering with you. Another thing I want to talk about is the fact that in order to go in this war, he had to kidnap our youth from universities and take them to war. Some of them were in school about to become doctors, and he would take them and tell them that they would just go there and cover wounds. Or if somebody was studying accounting, all of a sudden they were being trained to go to war. So this is something he's having to do because we are not willing to go freely. Rwandans don't want to go and fight. He's pushing our youth to go there and fight. And we as adults need to say, stop Kagame, and he does not represent us. And hopefully, history will really put him in his place, because what he's doing to Rwandans is something quite awful. As a Rwandese person, sometimes I think twice before saying where I'm from, because of the atrocities that he's doing there in our name. So that's why it's really freeing and important for us as Rwandans to say, we do not stand by him. We do not support him. And in fact, we support anything that will take him off any media or any place where we can even see him. Some of us cannot even stand seeing him. That's the type of trauma that he has created in us. Seeing him is basically seeing a bad dream. And we're hoping that there will be a day where he will have to face justice, because what he has done and what he is doing is quite frankly despicable. JP, I'll let you say a few words, because I know you know a lot about what he's doing in the DRC.
Well, this is also another open secret, but I would say only a few things. Number one, I'll start off by maybe trying to, not trying, actually distancing myself with he doesn't represent. I don't think we should, maybe, yes, he represents a country, but I'm not going to make myself among the people. I'm not going to put myself among the people that he represents. I think you too, I think we should distance ourselves from his representation, because, as you said, it's an embarrassment. So I think for me, I really don't believe that
He
Kagame
represents his
represents.
mafia. He represents his mafia.
He represents his own mafia, the Nore, the the new name, he baptized them. But I don't think we should not be associated with his dealings in Congo. And those who condone what he's doing, they should be also. I mean, they'll bear responsibility in the end, because it's Rwanda is going to pay a heavy price. That I agree. And we may have people there, we may have relatives, we may have friends, we may have a country to protect, but still, I don't think that he represents any of us, because that is the reason why we're here today. The second thing is, it's a positive thing that President Felix Tshisekedi, um, when he was meeting the youth, I believe, did mention that he is aware that Rwandans do not like what he is doing, and they are tired of Kagame. They just can't get rid of him. And that was a positive thing. And President Tshisekedi should be commended and saluted for doing that, because he did advocate for us. For some Congolese who did not understand our anger or our disappointment, I think to hear that from their own president, that was really moving. And other than that, I do agree with what you said, and I believe that the time has passed. I think the United States has done a great job. I know people disagree. They said, "Oh, there might be some game behind it." No, I think all we need is this, because they know that Rwandans are not going to step up. They're not going to um, stand up and protest. We know that they cannot do that. But to have the United States, a country that is so powerful as the United States, saying this must stop, we're going to withhold your aid, we're not going to allocate you the aid, the funds, because of these dealings you're doing, what you're doing to Congolese government and Congolese people. I think everybody should do the same, because this is a violation, is in violation of international laws. It is in violation of international human rights and human rights in general. So I do believe that if everyone, those people that are funding the government, do the same thing that the United States is doing, I think that would be a strong message, and that would allow Rwandans to actually maybe say, you know what, maybe Kagame does not have allies anymore. Because even today, he still lied that the United States. No, actually, no, I'll take that back. But I think even today, he still tells the people of Rwanda that he still have support from international community. Maybe not the United States, but maybe from somewhere else. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that we need France to also take a stand, because they have not been very upfront about their disagreement as to what Kagame is doing. They seem to very, very
They
shy.
will never be. They will never be. That's what I'm saying. The hypocrisy of some of the international community governments, they will never be, because they are supporting him. They are funding his military in Mozambique because of French interest in Mozambique. The British, same thing, because of the refugee deal agreement. That they still support they still support Kagame. So I don't think I'll expect the French to do something right now. Kagame has to be in really, really bad shape for
I think the
them
time will
to do
come, yes.
something.
I think the time will come where the
It
EU
will.
will push France to take a stand, because otherwise, obviously, France is not going to stand by Kigali while they lose all their other allies. But I
Absolutely.
it really is needed. We need that voice to come out and say, we're condemning this, and right now it hasn't happened. So let's move to
Definitely.
the next slide. So the next slide is about the fact that Kagame is holding us hostage. And you might think hostage is a big word, but it is actually true. Not all Rwandans have the right to request a passport and actually leave the country. If I felt persecuted in Rwanda and decided that I've had enough and that I wanted to leave, I could not get a passport. They actually restrict that freedom of being able to even leave the country. So imagine a government that would not only terrorize you, but when it's come for you, it's come time for you to leave the country to find a better life somewhere where you can enjoy your freedoms, they say, no, you cannot leave. And usually when that happens, it's because they're scared of what you might say when you leave the country, because they know what they have done. And so a lot of times you're basically held hostage in your own country. You're persecuted and you can't even flee the person who's persecuting you. So that's why I'm saying that Rwandans are being held hostage. Another example is the fact that athletes have defected after attending sports competitions abroad. For example, in 2018 at the Commonwealth Games in Australia, in 2012 at the Paralympic Games in the UK, Rwandese athletes decided not to go back home. So this is very telling, where you have a country where even athletes who you would think, would enjoy some freedoms because the country is, happy to have athletes to go abroad and perform. But that's not something Kagame cares about. You could be a scientist, you could be a doctor. Kagame does not value what you have to give to the country or what you have to offer to your fellow citizens. He will terrorize you regardless of who you are. So when people think of Rwanda, I want them to think of that. I want them to think people who are hungry, people who are being terrorized, who cannot leave their country, people who are being killed and jailed for no reason, for speaking their mind or because they want their wealth. Sometimes you could be jailed or killed because they simply want what you've worked for and you wouldn't give it to them. But then why would you? Why would you work hard only to hand over everything you worked for to one party that you're not even a part of? And so it's really important for people to understand that the situation is actually critical. People are being tortured in these jails. People who are being held hostage sometimes need to go outside the country to get medical treatment, or because they're just, essentially dead alive in their own country. They can get a job because the government will boycott you. They will make it so that nobody will give you a job. When they don't want you to thrive, they do everything in their power to annihilate you. So sometimes I just wonder, why are we fighting for all these freedoms in Europe and in the US, in many other countries? But when it comes to Africa, we just ignore the fact that none of these freedoms are there. Why can't I leave Rwanda if I'm being terrorized and persecuted? And a good example is Nwari John Williams. I remember that he had tried to get a passport and they wouldn't give it to him. He had tried to get his journalist accreditation renewed and they wouldn't do that because he needed that accreditation to get protection from foreign institution that helps journalists. What is it called again, JP? Journalists Without Borders, I think. So yeah, Reporters Sans Frontières, Journalists Without Borders. So sometimes you just wonder, why are we not caring about Rwandese freedoms when we care so much about our own? And it's really a matter of humanity. It's the humanity in us that should make us care. I should care that you don't have your freedoms, and you should care that I don't have my freedom. So just think about it. Let that sink in, that it's a matter of humanity. You don't have to like Rwandans, but you still want everybody, every man and woman around the world, to enjoy their basic freedoms. JP, I'll let you say a few words.
Thank you for that presentation. But I do well. I don't really, to be honest with you. This is just to highlight what is happening, as the same that we did to the previous slide. But we've been hostages for. It is a big word, as you mentioned, but it's not really. It does exactly explain what we are going through. So I know that we are the reason we are like a bargaining chip that he uses to, because without us, he cannot even travel. He cannot go to Europe. He cannot go to Benin. He cannot go to the UN. Yes, we are being held hostages, but as I said, there is complicity in this one, because if the things that he does, I'm repeating myself, things that he does, it is really, it's not like they're supporting him because they don't know what he is doing. They do. They just need to stop. Maybe by starting shows like this, the international community is going to understand that yes, Rwandans, even though they do not talk, but they know. So for starting a show like this, an English program that is going to be putting the blame to the those who are watching and ignore or just turn blind eyes, they're going to realize that, you know what, there are people that are going to ask us about this in the future. Sometimes when Kagame is no more. So this is the only thing that I think I can say about this, because it's just the truth. It's simply stating the truth that we're being held hostages, and those who are helping Kagame to hold us hostages need to stop.
Yeah, these superpowers have a choice. They can choose to be on the right side of history or the wrong side of history. We know, unfortunately, France has been on the wrong side of history for many years. And I think it's about time that changed. So that freedom that they fight for in their country, they need to allow that for other people, you know? So yeah, so let's move to the next slide, please. So now you're probably wondering, how can I help you? And there's many ways you can help free Rwandans. So if we could go to the next slide, we're going to show you how you can help us. On the Twitter Radio Iteme page, if we could go to the next slide, we're going to be posting pictures with certain hashtags, and we're going to ask you to retweet those images so that they can have a lot of reach and reach a lot of people and make people wonder what is going on in Rwanda that I need to know and that I don't know. So if we could go to...
I'm not sure whether you're frozen because you still see the same picture.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same picture too. Next slide, please. Yes.
Okay, here we go.
So we're going to tweet this picture, and this picture has 3 books. Actually, Do Not Disturb has just been released in French. So if you have a French speaking friend, he or she can get this book in French as well. And obviously, there's also another one in English. There's 3 books there that can really help you understand what's going on in Rwanda. So you don't have to believe me, you don't have to believe JP, but these books are years and years of research and understanding exactly how the regime works. And I really recommend these books because when
So this is, I'm sorry, I do see 2 books. What is the third one? Where is the third one?
Rwanda, Le Loge du Sang, do you see that?
No, I don't.
On the bottom, the black one?
Oh, might be my screen doesn't show. I don't see it.
Yeah, so we have In Praise of Blood, and then we have L'éloge du sang, and then we have Do Not Disturb. So the French version of Do Not Disturb is actually Assassins sans frontières, which actually means murderers without border. And that is the definition of Kagame's regime. Kagame
Yeah,
is...
for some reason, I hope maybe it's just on my end, but I can't see. I can't see my...
I can see it on my end, so I think...
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're going to tweet this image and we're going to essentially do these hashtags, and we want to share this with the President of the United States, USAID, Human Rights Watch, and the EU Council, because we want them to decide to be on the right side of history. So I think that if the EU and the United States stopped giving aid to Kagame, it wouldn't take long for his regime to fall apart. So we really need your voice as a citizen of any of these countries to say, hey, I don't want my taxpayer money going to a regime that's killing their people. So that is also your right, because you have the freedom to do so in your country without fearing anything. We Rwandans cannot do that in our country. If we stood up there in Kigali and said, hey, US, don't send money here in Kigali, Kagame is killing us, he would probably kill me in broad daylight. So this is why we need to do this online campaign to allow anybody, wherever you are, to tweet this so that we can reach as many people as possible. So you can check out Radio Iteme's Twitter page, and we're going to have multiple pictures. If we could go to the next slide. So this next slide is pictures of political prisoners that Kagame has jailed, really for speaking their mind. One of them in particular, Chuma, he wasn't even a politician. He was a journalist, a YouTuber, but the reason why we put him in the political prisoner is because he happened to witness the fact that Kizito Mihigo, who we talked about, had been tortured, and the government never forgave him for essentially conveying that he had seen this with his own eyes. So for him saying, hey, by the way, when I went to see Kizito's dead body, I noticed that they had taken his eyes out. That is a sin in Kigali. So imagine somebody so evil that they do evil things, and when you point them out, you're the bad guy and you're jailed, and he's being tortured. Chuma is actually being tortured with electricity. His own dad testified to that. And I wouldn't be surprised if one day he comes up dead. So it's really important. Time is of the essence, because any of these people could die because they're not being held in a clean, safe place. They're being held in a dirty and sanitary, dark place. A lot of these people are jailed in holes, so we're told. So this is actually something you need to let sink in and realize that your tweet could only take 2 seconds of your time, but it could mean life or death for any of these people.
You just mentioned that Chuma is not a politician, but I want to mention, I mean, I know you know this as well, but the only politician in this slide, it is
Shady.
Mushahidi. The rest
Yeah.
of them, none of them is a politician.
Yeah, but I think I said political prisoner because the reason they were jailed was for political reason, not that they're politicians. It's because they were in
Hmm.
jail for political reasons. So that's what people need to understand. Imagine being a journalist, or Idamanje is not even a journalist. She is a citizen like you and I. She just so happened to go on her YouTube channel and say a few things that she didn't think were okay. One of the things she
So
said,
is Karashira. Yeah, the same
yeah,
thing. They were YouTubers.
he was a professor, lost his job, and open his YouTube channel, just like I might open my YouTube channel and say, I don't agree with the government torturing people, or I don't agree with the government killing people. And all of a sudden, I'm the bad guy, you know? So these people need our help, because that could be me or you, where we're trying to fight for our freedoms and we end up jailed, being tortured, living in a dark hole. Some of them are starting to have eyesight issues from being in a place where there's no light for months on end. We've heard of torture. We've heard of denial of medication. Um, they're not getting any money being sent from the outside. It
But
is.
let me ask you something. Just because if someone jails you for no reason, do you really expect that they're going to do to once you are in jail? Now they're going to be nice to you. They're going to do what they're supposed to do, because you have to understand that you are there. You shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
should not be there in the first place. So if they put you there, it is because they want you out of the community, the surrounding society, and it is just because not because of what you did, but because they don't want you. They just don't want you.
But don't
And
you
I
think
don't think
taking you away, jailing you is enough? If you take my freedom of, going to the washroom
you
when I
would
want,
think so. Yeah.
you know what I mean? So that's why it's so diabolical, because it's not enough that they've taken your freedom away. They have to torture you, and that's not enough.
Hmm.
They have to
And
starve.
not because if once you appear in courtrooms, they don't want you to say what is happening and why you were unjustly held, stuff like that.
It's absolutely, I think anybody who lives in the free world, so anybody who lives outside of Rwanda, because I'm pretty sure the only other place that has worse freedoms is North Korea. um I think that they should be on this case. They should take this and investigate further, read reports. You don't have to believe. If you have any bit of doubt, do your research, follow independent media, and really see if this sits well with you. And if it doesn't sit well with you, then do something. You can essentially help us change the turn of history just by informing yourself, because once you know the truth, you will be like me, JP, and many others who cannot just sit back and watch this happen. Next slide, please. And the other slide we're going to be posting is justice for Kagame's victims. These are people that Kagame has killed. We know they're dead, and they're not coming back, but there were
Maybe
still,
say some of them, some of them.
well, why would we say some of them?
No, because say these are the people that he has killed. Some of
Oh,
his
yes,
victims, but
yes. There's a few of his victims. Yes, I don't want people to think that we're here because he killed 4 people. He killed more than that. But the reason we want justice for them is because nobody has been jailed for killing them. So in Rwanda, if
hmm
you kill somebody that Kagame doesn't like, you will most likely never spend a day in jail. But if you say that
By
Kagame,
the way, you can mention Gasakure as well. You can mention the list is endless.
you can also
Those,
mention any
yeah, they
politician.
don't jail anyone
Any
for
politician who
doing,
has ever worked with Ingabire Victoire ended up dead or missing.
yeah, and no one is ever been held responsible for doing it,
Exactly. And in a
for his
country
action.
we supposedly have so much security, we know that these people didn't disappear out of thin air. These people,
Doesn't it scare you to hear like when the police um the police the police they are the one they shoot somebody dead, they and they the one that goes out and they say, this is what happened, this is what version of event, and yeah,
Yeah.
That's it. No more. And then there's no investigation. There's no court that is going to say, or nobody is going to bring charges against those police officers,
But
maybe
you know why
hoping that they're
there's no
going to be
investigation,
acquitted.
JP? Why is there
I'm
no
sorry?
investigation? The reason there's no investigation because our institutions are criminal institutions.
Yeah,
Real
they won't.
criminal
But you
institutions.
would think that they will say, okay, it was a mistake, or maybe this police was, the death, the police was not justified. So let's bring this case forward in the courtroom, and then in a court of law, and then maybe this police officer is going to tell his side of the story, and the judge are going to acquit him. And they don't even bother to do that. Don't even bother to do that.
But they don't
It is
bother because
very
they're spineless. So recently, for people who don't know, Kagame said that
No, it's not just that because of that. They also know that that is of. I agree with you. Yes, they are spineless, but they also know the truth.
yeah,
They don't
so
even want
they
to
know
go
the
there.
truth,
They said,
but
why would we do that?
they also know we're too scared to say anything, and that's
Right.
true. How many Rwandans are gonna go and say, I want justice for Nwari, or I want justice for Asinapol? Nobody's going to do that because they know what the consequences are. So that's why we need this media campaign where anybody, anywhere can help us get this message out. There's victims of Kagame, there's people he has currently killed who are basically dead alive, and we need help. So if you could move to the next slide, please. The last word we're going to tell you is do not visit Rwanda. As we said, the money that you're going to spend there is going to go towards fueling this military-led mafia. The money is going to go towards paying soldiers who go to the DRC and rape women and kill them. Your money is going to go towards buying arms. Nothing good is going to come out of your trip to Rwanda other than funding this deadly regime. And all I need to say is that we need to stop feeding the beast. And so your way of helping is joining us in starting this media campaign that aims to show the world that enough is enough. And really, time is running out. Every day, our brothers and sisters are being killed and jailed, and they're being tortured, and they're taking their land away, their wealth, just because they've been critic of the regime, or they just dared say this is not right. That alone could kill them. And we know that together we're stronger. So we really need each other, and we need you to win this fight for freedom. And as Martin Luther said, injustice, I think he said that injustice is a threat. No, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So, and we have seen that happen in Rwanda. That injustice in Rwanda has crossed borders to the DRC, and it could cross even further if we don't stop it. So that's why we need freedom for all, so that that injustice can die down and that freedom can prevail. And we really need to stop the killings, the poisonings, the false imprisonments, the terror, the threats. And we need to cut the head off of this snake that's almost killing all the children of the village. And that's what Kagame is like. He's going after people who he know are weak. And we're weak because he has terrorized us, he has traumatized us, he has starved us. We don't have the strength, but we really do believe that together we can gather that strength. And that's why we're here. So JP, if you would like to say some last words, I think we'll wrap up our show.
I'll let you wrap up because I think I'll let you do the conclusion. But we did say in the beginning of the show, the people who support Kagame, they are helping him indirectly to commit all these crimes that he's committing, whether in Rwanda or in Congo. I do believe that they just, as I said, I mentioned several times, they are turning blind eyes, but it's not because they don't know what he's doing, because there are reports. They're reports, and these reports are not done by Rwandans. They are not made by Rwandans. They are made by the Journalists Without Borders, as you mentioned. They're done by the Amnesty International. They're done by Human Rights Watch. They're done by the United States State Department report every year. So they have documented all his dealings, the stuff that he does. So in the end, I think you're going to look yourself in the eye and say, in the mirror and say, why in the world was I supporting this man? Because things, as you can see, I think we can see that Kagame is losing control and is going to be even more reckless. And I'll let you do the wrap up, and then thank you for this program. I was about to call you Amanda. I'm sorry. Ndabaga, not Amanda.
I just want to tell people that Rwanda's lives matter, and Congolese lives matter. Yes, we're poor in a small country that might be insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but we're people too, and we suffer. And in a world where, we always talk about these freedoms and justice and well-being, it's about time we enjoy them too. And I think it's a small ask, but it would mean the world to millions of people if you could choose to be on the right side of history and say, yes, I took part in the fight of freedom along with the Rwandans, along with the DRC, because there was a leader at the time that was named Kagame. Kagame is going to go down as the Hitler of Africa. So I think in 20 or 30 years, when people are talking about history, you would want to have been on the right side of history, not to have listened to this and walk away, but listen to this and do something. Tell your friends, talk about it, tweet about it, use social media, really raise awareness because it matters. And yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for listening, and have a good night.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. Good night.
Unana nyarwanda rw'impinduka, l'Alliance rwandaise pour le changement.
Iyo duserutse dutambukanishe shesha ibirenge bijya mu kujya imbere intambwe ku yindi kandi kuri gahunda kuko arasisi turishema ry'urunana abaturage bazinduka kuzahira abo twiyeretse bakifuza urunana twageze amahanga dushaka amahoro twabonye inshuti nyinshi zitandukanye ariko naho twabonye uburuhukiro uretse mu runana nyarwanda